Okay, I'm going to close the executive session and reconvene our public meeting. It is November 20th, 2018, and the purpose of our executive session was to discuss pending litigation and real estate transactions pursuant to RCW 42.30.110IC. No action was taken by the Commission during that executive session, and we will now open the public meeting. Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Commissioner Shepard.
Here.
Commissioner Briscoe. Commissioner Bell, all present. Didn't remember my own name.
Were you waiting for yourself to say yes?
I was waiting for you to say, hey, who are you? And so we'll start with the public comment period. During this meeting, there will be two public comment periods, one at 4:30 and one again at 5:30. Out of respect for those who wish to speak, we ask that you hold your comments to about 3 minutes. Has anybody signed up?
There's no one signed up, Commissioner.
Anybody wish to speak about anything before this commission for 3 minutes?
Somebody's being nudged.
No, I just saw somebody that I love dearly. All right. No comments. We'll begin with the consent agenda.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner, do you have anything you wish to discuss about the consent agenda?
No, I think I have my question. No, my questions were answered prior to the meeting. Same here.
And I believe all mine were as well. So I think the consent agenda can go forward as is. Can you read the motion?
A motion to adopt resolution number 1377, approving the 2019 strategic budget, and resolution number 1378, authorizing the regular property tax levy and declaring a substantial need to maintain the maximum levy capacity.
Actually, we're on the consent agenda. So
We have to approve it, right?
Yeah, the consent agenda first. So I will move that, one of you move the, pass the consent agenda?
Aye.
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 Consent agenda approved.
Okay.
Now we can go on to the action item, sorry. We didn't finish that one. So for those of you that don't know, Diane is away, and we're making her life very difficult today and enjoying every minute of it. So the consent agenda has been approved.
Thank you. So next would be the presentations.
Presentations. Presentation for the Blaine tax exempt mandate update. And I would ask Mr. Fix to address that issue.
So City Manager Michael Jones is here from Blaine, and he's going to do the presentation.
Thank you. I won't take very long. I'm sure you have a busy evening. Thanks for having me.
Go ahead.
Pardon me?
Not really, but go ahead.
Okay, well, then I'll take my time.
Go ahead.
I wanted to come by for two reasons. First, I wanted to come by and say hello. I'm the new city manager for the city of Blaine. I started in June and enjoying things as it's rolling along. I've been working for the city for about 11 years, though I was the community development director for several of those years and transitioned into the new position in the summer.
Welcome.
Thank you. The reason that I wanted to speak with you tonight is about a multifamily development tax exemption that we're considering in the city. It has an effect on all special districts, and so my council has requested that I meet with the school district, the port district, and others to let you know about what we're considering. The impact on your tax collection will probably be nominal, very, very small, but nonetheless, it does potentially have an effect. Multifamily tax exemption is something that's newly available to us here in Whatcom County due to some changes in state law. And what it does is it allows cities to designate target areas where they wish to incentivize multifamily residential development. It can only apply to multifamily development, and it can apply only to the multifamily component of mixed-use buildings. So, for example, if you had something with commercial on the ground floor but apartments or condos upstairs, the commercial would still be taxed. The multifamily portion would not. And as I mentioned, it can't apply to single-family homes, so only multifamily projects. Our target area that we're looking for is consistent with our central business district zoning. So it's essentially downtown Blaine. There are a number of underdeveloped properties in that area and some undeveloped properties, and we're hoping this will help stimulate development. Particularly, though, we're interested in stimulating the multifamily housing, because having people live downtown is integral to having a dynamic and active downtown, which supports the businesses and services that are there. Another piece to it, though, is those units are typically less expensive than single-family homes, so it provides an opportunity for housing for people who might be priced out of the housing market. That may not always be the solution, because right now apartments are very high rental rates in the county and throughout the state. I understand that generally is the case. But adding to the inventory has positive effect on what people pay for their rent. So there are a variety of reasons to do it. The way that it works is the city can establish an 8-year tax exemption on multifamily units that are provided at market rate. So if they're just standard rental rate, the landlord can charge whatever the market will bear, they can be eligible for an 8-year tax exemption. If they include a certain portion of affordable housing in the mix, then they may be eligible for a 12-year exemption. And what that is it means that they don't pay a certain portion of the property tax on the building. And it's after that term, the 8 or 12 years goes by, then they begin being regular tax-paying properties. So it helps to make the projects, if you will, pencil out by being a little bit less expensive in those first years, or at least that's what the intent of the program is. So we want to do it, as I mentioned, for a variety of reasons, having to do with adding units into the downtown, adding more units to the inventory, providing less expensive units. We may include the affordable housing component in it. That's not decided yet. The city has not fully developed the program yet. It's kind of in its early stages. But I'm happy to answer any questions related to that. The key piece, of course, to the port and to all the other taxing districts, like the library district, the fire district, school district, is that during that period of time, your taxes would also not be collectible. So you would have potentially a reduced growth in your tax collection. Of course, there's also the argument that those projects may not have happened anyway without that incentive, so there wouldn't have been any tax collected. And there's also some potential reason to believe that with a revitalized downtown and enhanced environment, it kind of floats all boats a little bit higher, right? The value of all properties would generally tend to increase over time, so it might have an overall beneficial effect. We haven't analyzed that, and in fact, we don't intend to analyze that because it's a tremendously complicated thing to do, and it includes all sorts of wild variables, makes it difficult to know. But in any case, it's something that we're expecting will probably pass early next year if things continue to go well with our discussions in council, and we would hope to have it up and running by the middle of the year. Any questions for me on any of that? Or on any of the other fantastic things happening in Blaine?
I have a question.
So I noticed in your handout, what you drew with the purple line includes everything west, southwest, if you want to call it, of Peace Portal Drive in the property you're targeting.
It's southwest of the freeway is what that line is.
Right, I mean your
and
west
then-
line.
and then-
Peace Portal's included, you got a line that's drawn.
That's correct. It follows the railroad tracks on
Right.
that far side.
So that property is pretty much, with the exception of right in downtown, that's view property. So you're gonna put apartments, you're trying to put apartments in that view property area, or condominiums, or you don't care what they put?
It's zoned, it is zoned for multifamily it depends on exactly where you are in that corridor.
Okay.
It's zoned either for multifamily with allowances for some commercial in it, or a requirement that it be mixed use with commercial on the street level and multifamily can be above.
That was my other question, you're gonna, if commercial on the street level.
Yeah, so we actually used to have a requirement that pretty much that whole area in that downtown had to have ground floor commercial, but we eliminated that requirement about a year ago for some of the properties because there's just not that much need for commercial development. So it was what we were hearing from people, it was stopping them from developing their properties because they can't afford to have vacant commercial space for as many years as it may take to fill it, but they can afford to build condos or apartments and fill those. So different areas in the downtown have different requirements.
Okay, very good.
Thanks very much.
I just want to say I'm very supportive of this effort because I've, for the last 25 years, going through there wondering when Blaine was going to take off, and I just think this might be the catalyst that starts.
There are a number of things
Something.
happening right now, yeah, and we hope this
And
will
the
be part
timing
of
is
it.
right. You've got some activity, and I think it's a well-timed.
But be careful what you ask for in 20 years. You might be going, what did we do? It was quiet.
Well, that's what we're going for.
I ask that in my everyday life about once a week. What did I just do?
Thank you.
Fabulous, thanks. All right, web blocker update. Mr. Birdsall.
All right, good afternoon, Commission. Alan Birdsall, Manager of Marinas. I am here to present to you and give you an update on where we've been and what we've done with the web blockers in the last couple of weeks since the previous Commission meeting. I have here today with me the Marina Advisory Committee Chair, Paul Burrell, and then the Squalicum Harbor Master, Kyle Randolph. He'll be available to answer questions towards the end, and the MAC Chair will give an update on the MAC discussion that we had last week. So with that, just as a reminder, the Commission, at the last Commission meeting, directed staff to move forward and take action to have the web lockers that have users in them that are not active commercial fishermen, to start making those lockers available for the active commercial fishing fleet, since we had a long and extensive waiting list for that. So we've progressed and started moving forward on that. A couple of clarifying points before I do. Just wanted to clarify that there are 5 classifications of web locker users. One is the active commercial fishing fleet, which is those active commercial fishers that have provided proof of active commercial fishing within the last 2 years. Marine commercial, which is basically the port upland tenants that have businesses that support the marine businesses. Business license holders that are current business license holders that are also support marine businesses. And then marine use, those are the full-time moorage customers who are not considered ACF. And then non-marine use, otherwise known as recreational, all other users such as recreational moorage customers. The second point, clarifying point, is active commercial fishing designation. What is the criteria to be considered an active commercial fishing according to the Harbor Rules, Regulations, and Rates Handbook as approved by the Commission? Proof of ACF activity is within the last 2 years. It can include valid fishing license for current or previous fishing year, fish tickets or current previous fishing season, landing permits over the same period of time, and vessels that are rigged for licensed fisheries. The policy does not state that a vessel needs to be required, that a vessel is required to be moored in any harbor. So there's just a couple of clarifying points that we took into consideration when moving forward at the Commission's direction. So the first thing that we did is we took a look at the web locker list in both Blaine and Squalicum Harbor and validated those lists. In Blaine Harbor, we have a total of 28 people on those lists. 1 is a business license, 11 are ACF, active commercial fishers, who already have a locker, 17 are requesting their first locker. Of those, we also know we have some illegal sublets, or we'll call them undocumented sublets. We figure we have 8 of them at Blaine. And it's a little difficult to quantify these. We're still working on it because people just don't come up and let us know that they're using a locker, without permission. But we figure we have 8 of them at Blaine. 2 of those are on the waiting list for their first locker. 3 of them we anticipate are on the list for a second locker, and 3 of them are not on the waiting list at all.
Total number of lockers in Blaine?
66. And there's 186 in Squalicum. Now, the Squalicum's waiting list, we have a total of 91. 10 of those folks on that list are for marine use. 6 of them are business license holders. 9 are marine commercial. 14 are active commercial fishers who already have a locker. 22 are active commercial fishers who have a small locker or currently have a locker that are looking to vacate their existing locker to get into a larger locker. 30 are active commercial fishers requesting their first locker. The non-documented sublets at Squalicum Harbor, we figure is probably about 11. 3 of them are looking for their first locker, and the remaining 8 are not on the waiting list. So after we validated the waiting list for both the marinas, we ran a report of the web lockers of all the current tenants within both and what their classifications were, and took a look and realized that 75 to 80% of all folks in the web lockers that have the ACF designation have not provided the proof of active commercial fishing within the last 2 years. So that would mean technically 75 to 80% of the people are not active commercial fishers. We realize folks are out there doing their business, and that's just a technicality. So when we realized that, we decided that we really needed to send out 2 rounds of letters. The first round of letters to the folks that we really anticipate are not ACF. They may be retired, they're business license holders, they're the marine use, not upland tenants, or what we believe would be ACF and could provide the documentation. So we developed the list for the first round of letters, and the criteria for that was basically listed as business license, marine use, and non-marine use. They may have been listed as ACF but have not provided proof of ACF, have not completed or signed an updated mortgage or storage agreement, and have not had a boat in the harbor for the previous 2 years. And the reason why we chose a vessel not in the harbor for 2 years is that you need to provide proof for the last 2 years that you were fishing. If a boat's not been in here for 2 years, we took that as a potential indicator that maybe they're no longer active commercial fishing. What we did at that point is we further analyzed that, took it back to some of the frontline staff, pulled out a few people off that list that says, yeah, okay, their boat hasn't been here, but we know they've been here and they are potentially active commercial fishers, and we'll get them to submit their proof. So we sent out 54 letters, termination letters, that represents 58 lockers. 14 lockers in Blaine Harbor. 0 of them were business license holders, marine use or recreational. 40 of those letters were to Squalicum tenants. 9 of them were business license holders or marine use or recreational. In that letter that we summarized, the commission direction from the November 6th meeting, we included a link to the YouTube video so that the public could see the discussion. And further identified, customers as non-ACF, and we gave 30 days notice. The current upland storage agreements state 15 days, but we provided 30 days to make sure we cover the breadth of different upland storage agreements that are in place. There's like 3 or 4 that are in place. Not everybody's updated their agreements. And we also indicated in the letter that if you are an ACF, bring in proof. That's all it takes. Cross your name off that termination list. Responses. From Blaine Harbor up to 3 o'clock today, we've received 6 responses. 1 of them has provided proof of ACF. 3 will provide proof within the next week or 2. And 2 will most likely move out of their lockers. 1 is requested until spring to be able to do so, and we will work with the folks to accommodate that. Squalicum Harbor, we've received 10 responses from the letters, 5 who have already provided proof of ACF, 1 who will provide proof soon, 2 business license marine users or recreational who responded. They're very disappointed that they have to vacate their lockers, but they do understand, and they will start emptying out their lockers to comply. We received a response from 1 Squalicum Harbor tenant that should not have been included on round 1, and then 1 that just had general questions. So that's the response so far in the first letter. Currently, we're going to be sending out a second round of letters. Those we anticipate to go out Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Those are going to be all of those remaining customers that are listed as ACF who have not provided one of the following: either proof of ACF, active commercial fishing within the last 2 years, and who have not completed a current storage agreement. We'll give those customers 30 days to comply and provide us that information. And for those that don't provide it within 30 days, they may be subject to the termination letter pending the direction of the commission. Staff is currently working on the draft of that letter. And again, we anticipate that to go out this next week. Through all of this, we hope that we get everybody current with the information and the proof of ACF that they need, and everybody on the current upland storage agreements, and hopefully empty out a couple of the web lockers. So since in the last 2 weeks, there's been a lot of activity by both staff and a quite healthy discussion at the Marine Advisory Committee last week. And I've asked the MAC chair, Paul Burrell, to come in and just kind of give a couple of highlights on that discussion last week. Paul?
Thanks, Alan. Commissioners, Paul Burrell, Marine Advisory Chair. Last Tuesday, we were asked to kind of go through this issue and flesh it out a little bit. I would like to thank those who were able to attend, Executive Director Fix, Commissioner Bell. We had a couple fishermen there, also representatives from local fishing organizations too. The nature of our discussion was positive. At no time did anyone oppose the Commission's current course of action. Most, if not all, discussion was concentrated on implementation of the process and how to best be sensitive to those with physical limitations or who are temporarily absent or that have been asked to vacate. In general, the consensus of the MAC was unanimous and could easily be summed up in 3 points. 1, support the ACF through following port policy and use web blockers as a means to strengthen our local fishing industry. 2, base future policy in regards to this issue on sound business principles. 3, allow upland and water-dependent tenants to use web blockers and to promote fair and diverse waterfront economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And based off the MAC suggestions on being fair and working with folks in the commission's direction and Commissioner Bell saying do the right thing, we do intend to work with the folks that may need a little bit more time to get out. Some of them have a lot of gear and equipment in there, and this isn't a drop-dead date. This is just really a starting point. And as Commissioner Briscoe commented a couple of weeks ago, it's going to be tough. It isn't going to be easy, but somewhere we had to start, and this is where we started. We also had a meeting on November 15th with 5 representatives from the commercial fishing fleet. They also had web lockers. It included staff, Executive Director Rob Fix, both the harbor masters and myself, Commissioner Briscoe. It was a very positive, enlightening discussion. A lot of good ideas came out of there for policies to add to our existing policies to make some changes for long-term future. And the group plans to meet together again in a couple of weeks once we see the results from these letters, kind of see where we're at and how things shake out. We've also had one records request, came in Friday evening. Dealing with this, we anticipate having that information provided to the person by the end of tomorrow. And again, we anticipate within the next 2-3 weeks, once we start getting more responses from some of these letters, we think some of the folks are at the Marine Trades Expo, and so may not have got a chance to look at the letter or give us a call. So we expect to maybe get a few more calls next week and inquiries on that. So we'll have a better idea where we're at 2 to 3 weeks. Hopefully by the next commission meeting, at least we can say who we heard from and what we anticipate opening up. So with that pretty much sums up my update, my presentation. Welcome for any questions for myself or the MAC chair, Paul Burrell, or Harbor Master for Squalicum, Kyle Randolph.
Could I have the information you gave to us to start with? You can just email it to me, Alan, the numbers you came up with. I wasn't
Absolutely.
writing down fast enough, so if you could just email me or if you got a paper.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. A question for Paul. Were percentages talked about when the marine use, other tenant marine use numbers? Were percentage of lockers talked about, or a number that set aside for those folks over
They-
the ACF, or was it just existing people are there and?
In terms of what we just heard
Yeah,
from.
charter boat people and so on and so forth.
It was not as full of a presentation on numbers, but it was discussed, yes.
Any feeling, what do people have to say?
I think the general consensus, kind of as I said, that most of the MAC members were in agreement with following port policy and with the rental agreement. Since these are subsidized lockers, I think the feeling was if someone has retired or needs to move on or has ended being an active commercial fisherman, it was kind of time for them to pack up their stuff and allow someone, a younger family. We had one person give a Harley Ethelball last week, came in, great family, very big, profitable operation, moved up here from Seattle area, wife works for Microsoft. That's more money coming into our economy up here. I think it's a good deal. And these are the types of things people we can bring in if there is storage available for them.
Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
And I'll speak for, just as an observer, I think the tone that was set was that this is going to be a short-term painful situation for a lot of people. But once we get it honed in and we get the policy set and we abide by the policy, it won't be as difficult. But the first round is going to be something where we have to make some concessions for people who just need more time, need a little bit more help. So the first round of notices that go out and the first round of people that are evicted basically are going to get a lot more latitude than they will 2 years from now, for example, when we have established policy, established procedures, everybody knows the rules, knows we're going to abide by the rules. So there's going to be a lot of grace given, I think, to the people who are initially notified. That would seem to be the overriding concern. As long as we act in that manner, I think we'll be received a lot better.
I'd just like to put forward that the meeting I attended here, I'm sorry, I wanted to get to the MAC meeting, but I had some other stuff come up and I couldn't come, but I had intended on coming to that. But the meeting that we had here on the 15th was a very forward-thinking meeting. It wasn't just about, okay, we're going to set some rules up for today and tomorrow or next year. We were looking into the future, how to make it so that we don't have to address this again, and the people that want to come to our port and get storage or moor their boat here will have rules to look at to know that they can think about entertaining that for their business. It wasn't just a how do we fix it right now thing. It was how do we make it work for into the future so that the commission and staff doesn't have to deal with this again.
Mr. Shepherd, do you have anything to say?
No, I think having that built in so we don't have to go through this process again would be really nice if we're able to bake that into the process a little better. And I think we're going to see, just with some loosening up, some people who are the first responders to recognize that they have a locker that they shouldn't have at the moment. It's going to start putting some motion in that wait list already. So we're going to see some kind of immediate results for some folks who have been waiting for quite a long time. And I think we'll see that in both harbors. So that was really my interest, and I'm appreciative of all the staff for their work. I know it's not the easiest thing, and you guys have done this under a pretty tight timeline as well, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Alan, well done. This whole process has been difficult, and you guys have been pros and professional. I guess it's the same thing.
Pros and acronyms, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that back to the harbor masters because they're the ones who really know their folks and do a great job working with them.
Yeah. Okay, now we're going to close we're going to open the public hearing on the 2019 strategic budget. This is a public hearing. We're going to close the regular meeting and open a public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak about the 2019 strategic budget is more than welcome to come and give us comment. This would be the time to do so. Anybody signed up for that?
No one signed up, Commissioner.
Anybody want to talk money? Oh, I expected you during the last discussion.
Jim Kyle, Vice President of the Working Waterfront Coalition. I'm here because Pete Granger is our president who's on vacation, well-deserved. Thanks for the opportunity, Commissioners. We have made comments on the budget in the past, and those comments and suggestions have always been received respectfully and in most cases acted upon, and we appreciate that. This year, we've asked Tamara for some extra help, and she's done that by answering questions and providing additional information, and we really thank her for that. However, I would like to ask a quick question in defense of Mr. Schmelik. What is the definition of an accountant?
You can come to the mic anytime.
A person who solves a problem you did not know you had in a way you do not understand. So back to being serious. For our budget review this year, we asked Tamara for a pre-crash budget so we could compare past port objectives to those of 2019. I want to quote just one example out of many to show how much port goals have changed. And this is from 2007, and it was an objective of the real estate division. It's very short, so listen carefully. Explore the development feasibility of existing web locker sites. So what development feasibility was being explored at the time? About the same time, the Port of Everett demolished its only web locker building to make way for a condominium project. This chased away a majority of its commercial fishing fleet and most of its marine trades businesses. But give them some credit, they did name a street Pursaner Way.
That was the way out of town, wasn't it?
You always have one better. Now, fortunately, in Whatcom County, we dodged that pre-crash bullet. The Port of Bellingham now has changed leadership at all levels. And speaking of web lockers, we are now constructing a new web locker building in Blaine to increase locker supply and clear the way for marine trades expansion on the peninsula. A far different story compared to 2007. Back to the 2019 strategic budget draft, it confirms we will not be tearing down web lockers to make space for the condominiums in our future. It contains objectives that strongly support commercial fishing and the marine trades alongside other port responsibilities. It also funds capital projects that are important to working waterfronts. So we support this budget as written, and we view the port as a partner in our mission to promote the vitality and working waterfronts of Whatcom County for the benefit of the people of Whatcom County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, staff, fellow commissioners, and executive director.
Thank you, and there was no mention of Sea Feast in that discussion as being a line item in the budget. Did you want to addendum your discussion?
Well, just briefly, we sent Matt Harden before to emphasize the fact that as the Sea Feast Festival transitions from a mostly volunteer, very dedicated leadership group that subsidized the festival with its time and talents to a more professional staff that is going to require being paid at the time they put the work in, which would be a change for part of the cycle, and to be paid at the appropriate rate. And of course, the festival is on the road to self-sufficiency, but in the meantime, to get over this transitionary period, Matt, and I'll emphasize the fact that this is an important time for funding. So all sponsors are welcome to help out with that process. Thank you.
Just want to make clear that this commissioner loves that festival, and wanted to give you that opportunity. Okay, anyone else wishing to speak on the strategic budget? Hearing none, we're going to close the public hearing on the 2019 strategic budget and reconvene the regular commission meeting. And now we move to action items. Now.
Okay. A motion to adopt resolution number 1377, approving the 2019 strategic budget, and resolution number 1378, authorizing the regular property tax levy and declaring a substantial need to maintain the maximum levy capacity.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tamara Sobczak, Director of Finance. And I'd like to thank Jim Kyle for taking over my joke tonight. That was fantastic. The one I had prepared was not even close. So the two resolutions in front of you today complete our 2019 budget process. The first one, as Lindsay said, adopts our final budget. It requires quarterly updates, financial updates, and it also sets the tax levy amount. The second resolution in front of you is required by the county. They have different language that they require, and that is solely has to do with the tax levy. So it sets the levy, protects the future levy capacity. And if there are no other questions, I ask for your approval.
I'm sorry.
That was it. I'm well. How are you?
Maybe go to Michael first.
I don't have any at the moment.
I have none.
I have none. Except that I read it from forwards to backwards to forward to make sure I didn't miss a page.
That being said, would you read it one more time and we'll take it from there?
Okay. A motion to establish the dates, times, and location of, could I possibly screw up again? I'm so sorry. A motion to adopt resolution number 1377, approving the 2019 strategic budget, and resolution number 1378, authorizing the regular property tax levy and declaring a substantial need to maintain the maximum levy capacity.
Commissioners?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Thank you.
Action item number 2.
Okay. A motion to establish the dates, times, and location of regular Port of Bellingham Commission meetings for the 2019 calendar year per the provided schedule.
So Commissioners, we brought this forward a little early because we're changing some of the meetings next year. In fact, if Tamara, can you pop up and maybe put the calendar up? Where is it? Oh, it's, there it is.
I'll tell you why.
I don't think so. Okay.
Bear with me here while we get the calendar up. So January 1st, New Year's Day is the first Tuesday of the month, so obviously we didn't want to have a meeting on that day, so we juggled that to be the January meeting to start on the second Tuesday. There happens to be 5 Tuesdays in January, so I think it should work out okay. You'll see that on this schedule. The green highlighted ones are actual commission meetings. So in January, we're looking to meet on the 8th and the 22nd. That still gives you 2 weeks between the 22nd and February 5th. So you won't have back-to-back meetings there. And then similar to how we dealt with last summer, we did one meeting in July and one meeting in August. So that meeting is on July 9th, which is the second Tuesday in July, and then August 13th, which is the second Tuesday in August. And then the only other change from the normal is in December. We also went to one meeting, which is on December 10th. Instead of being the first or third Tuesday, it's on the second Tuesday. Any questions about that schedule?
Yeah, the only question I had was didn't we have a conflict on the 8th with the Marine Advisory Committee, and was that moved?
I believe the MAC has moved.
You've moved that as well?
MAC has moved, yep.
I guess it'd be a request in October to move the October 15th to the 22nd. And the reason I would ask that is is our fishing season opens on the 10th. And it would probably mean I'd be calling in for that meeting, so if there was no objection, the 22nd, I wouldn't be calling in, I don't believe.
And it looks like that's also a 5 Tuesday month, so if we move it to the 22nd, you'll still have 2 weeks between your last meeting in October and your first one in November.
Is that okay with you guys, or? I mean, does it mess?
It doesn't mess with me.
It's fine with me.
It's way too far out for me to know.
Yeah.
Well, ours is pretty set every year, so.
Yeah, sound good.
Okay,
Fine with that
Okay.
change.
so it'll just be the one change then, moving the October 15th to October 22nd for 2019.
Okay. With that addition,
A motion to establish the dates, times, and location of regular Port of Bellingham Commission meetings for the 2019 calendar year per the provided schedule.
with the one addition that we will move the October meeting.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, action item number 3.
Approval of a motion authorizing the executive director to execute the necessary contracts and employment practices for the implementation of the 2019 Employee Benefits Program.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Elizabeth Monahan, Director of Human Resources. It is our annual benefit update time, and this time we've got such good news, I'm just going to smile through the whole thing, so you go ahead and ask me really hard questions, okay? All right, just a little bit of how we did in 2018 utilization. These numbers are through September from our broker. So the medical plan, everybody was healthy. Look at this, 89.6% of expected claims, so running below our expected claims. So apparently people are getting their well visits done, they're getting all their checks, they're eating healthy, they're doing all the right things, because we also had 0 stop-loss violations. So as you recall, we have stop-loss insurance that kicks in after anyone goes over $75,000 in a year. So no stop-loss violations. We did have 8 large claims. Those large claims are defined as those that are over $30,000 in a year. So we had 5 that were $30,000 to $50,000. We had 3 that were over $50,000. So most everybody was really healthy. Few that had little issues, but not so bad. Dental vision plan, on the other hand, was 114% of expected claims. So a couple years ago, we switched from having a reimbursement plan where employees had to go pay in full to get their dental and vision checks and glasses and fillings done and everything, and then they had to wait because we had to submit to get the reimbursement, and it had to go through a third-party administrator, and then it went through our payroll, and so people could wait up to a month to get reimbursed for that. And we believed that wasn't a very good plan because utilization was fairly low. So we switched it to a traditional self-insured insurance plan. So now you just pay your deductible and it's covered at the appropriate rates. We expected utilization to skyrocket because we figured people were delaying their dental and perhaps vision health. And so it spiked a little bit and then it dropped down. And now everybody, I think, is getting crowns and root canals and new glasses because we're right back up. But overall costs, our dental vision plan is pretty minor compared to the overall benefit package. Long-term disability, we had 1 claim, and flexible spending account, we have 29 participants. So rate changes for 2019. Our broker took our stop-loss insurance out to the market again. And Sun Life, again, is the best offer that we have. And we actually had a decrease in their overall rate, which is really phenomenal that we're getting a decrease in rate by a very small margin of 0.2%. HMA, who is our administrator, had no increase in their fees, so that was another rate pass-through. Envision RX, which is our pharmacy benefit manager, also had no rate increases. Lincoln Financial, we were just coming off of a 2-year rate guarantee, and that's for our life insurance and long-term disability insurance. They came in with an increase, and our broker was just fantastic, and they talked them down to another year with no increase. Navia is our administrator for our flexible spending accounts, and they had no rate increase. Health Promotion Northwest is our employee assistance program, and while we don't use our broker to get the rates for our EAP, we don't anticipate a rate this year. And then Kibble and Prentice, who is our broker, they're in the second year of a new 3-year agreement, and there's no increase in their rate for this year either. So it's sounding pretty good, right? It is.
I don't know, it sounded pretty good, thinking it made me nervous.
Oh, I'm not making anybody nervous here. This is all smiles. So in addition to what you just heard about no rate increases in many of these things, our broker suggested a couple of plan design changes that we think are going to be beneficial in helping people be preventive in their care and take action early on instead of waiting till things get really bad and then they get those big claims. So we introduced the concept of MD Live last year, which is where you can get on your phone, get on Skype, FaceTime, and you can talk to an actual physician and they can diagnose you and they can send a prescription immediately to your favorite pharmacy. We had a $10 copay. We had some utilization on that. We're getting rid of that copay so that it makes it even easier for people to access MD Live and get things taken care of very quickly. It's a huge time saver, especially if you have little kids. I mean, I remember, the kids would wake up in the middle of the night. You knew it was an ear infection. You knew exactly what drug you needed, but you had to wait until the morning, pack them all up, ship them off, take them. Now you can call 24/7, get that medicine, take care of business. No copay, so really nice. Prescription drugs, we made a change last year to our Tier 3 drugs, and it was a 2-step part. So in 2018, we increased the cost, the copay for those Tier 3 non-preferred drugs, so that it was 50% of the actual cost up to a cap of $75, with the understanding that in 2019, we're going to raise that to $100. So now, Tier 3 drugs, you're either going to pay 50% of the drug or a maximum of $100. The next thing we did is we took massage therapy, which was bundled with rehabilitative services, and split it out. So on advice from our broker, they're thinking that to increase the ability to have massage therapy could help some long-term musculoskeletal disorders that tend to, if they don't get addressed early on, could end up in surgery. So if we can address them early on, we have some better health, lower costs. So we're going to take massage therapy, acupuncture, and chiropractor and give them each higher annual caps. So each of those buckets of services, employees will now be able to access up to 25 times a year. And so that's an increase in service there. Another item that we're going to include in full is for non-surgical obesity treatment. There's one visit for a dietitian. Thought that was a really positive thing. And then for anybody that's not really interested in colonoscopy and would prefer to have another option, if you've been watching TV, there's lots of ads out there for Cologuard. Apparently this is something you can do at home. It's less invasive, not a problem. They will cover that at 100%, just so that people can make sure that they're getting their preventive checks in and not having an excuse that they don't want to go in for a colonoscopy. So some minor tweaks to the plan, but overall, they're going to be very beneficial and provide more service to our employees and their families. So dental vision, I said 114% over expected. Kibble & Prentice also anticipates a 5.4% increase in the cost of the dental claims and a 16.5% increase in the vision claims. So that's going to end up being a 7% increase in our premium rates on our dental. So we talked to our benefits committee and said, hey, let's try to share some of this increase, and we've got a lot of spouses out there on the plan because it's free. So let's start charging for our spouses to be on the plan. So the benefits committee adopted that and recommended that we go forward and charge $5 a month, a very minimal charge to include spouses on the plan, and then the plan will continue to pay for employees and their children at no cost to the employees. So here is our expected costs. We're not raising rates for medical. I told you the good news on that. So 2018 estimated costs, a little over $1.7 million. We expect the same estimated costs in 2019, so no increase in our rates there. Dental, 7% increase on premiums. We're going to share part of that with employees, so 3.6% increase on our dental costs. Life and accidental death and disability, that went up a little bit, 0.4%, simply because it's based on salaries, and as salary growth goes, the rate goes with it. LTD, no increase. EAP, Employee Assistance Program, so no other increases. So you get out to that bottom line there in the far right bottom corner, 0.23%. And I would tell you that most places are looking at, they don't have that little decimal out in front of that too, okay? So this is just really fantastic news for our benefits plan. Here's the premium structure. So the total, we'll just look at the employee only, the total medical premium is $650.88 a month. The port will pay $611.77, the same thing that we're paying currently in 2018, and employees will pay $39.11. For employee-only dental and vision, the port increase will increase to $51.33. Employees will still pay $0 for themselves, but if you look at the next line down, that's where that $5 charge comes in for employees and spouses. Any questions on that?
I have none.
You just wait till this screen, because this last one is the best. Okay, so that was really good news.
She really is excited.
I'm excited. Yeah, like nobody really gets excited about benefits. Tamara does, and Rob and Lindsay, because we're on the benefits committee. We get excited about this stuff. It's good.
That's good. It is good.
So 2014, we were fully insured under Regents, and our premium was $1.7 million. So you've probably heard $1.7 million somewhere else, right? That was our total estimated cost. Still, that's 4 years ago, we were paying $1.7 million. So these numbers come from Kibble and Prentice. So they took, in 2015, Regents didn't want to lose us because they were making a lot of money on us. They actually reduced their quote to us to $1.69 million. We were able to decide to go self-insured at that point in time, and we had a planned savings of over $400,000. If we use trend increases at 10% increases a year over the fully insured costs compared to what our actual costs have been and our estimate for 2018, you can see that since 2014, we would have saved over $2 million from staying in our old plan. Now, I have to say that we would never have spent that because we could never have afforded it. So we would have had to decrease the benefit, or we would have had to have some kind of increased premium sharing with our employees in order to maintain even close to the level of plan that we have right now. But this is a great story. It's a great story on how we were able to go self-insured with a fantastic partner in this, with Kibble and Prentice, and design our health insurance and our plan in a way that supports our employees and their families, and it hasn't busted the bank. In fact, we've saved money. So that's my really happy slide there.
Good job.
Yes, it's awesome.
Yeah, my only question is why aren't more groups following our lead with this? You guys get asked to present at,
You have to be
conferences and share how well we've done so others are able to learn from this.
You got to be the right size.
Yeah,
And I bring this up with the ports all the time with executive directors, and most of them they're not big enough. You got to have at least 100 employees to make this work. 50, it's not going to cut it. If you're too big, you're going to do something a little different. And you see that with Bellingham Cold Storage, who has their own doctor's office, right? They staff it with doctor and nurses, so they're big enough to do that. But if you're less than 100 employees, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I think what Rob said is absolutely right. We're just kind of that sweet spot with the size of employees. We have about 108 on the plan, and then we have about 260 lives on the plan, so that's spouses and employees that are on the plan. And I think if you get too much smaller, you have too much risk. If you get too much bigger, you're going to look at different options, and those things might be out there that might be more available. So I think we just have this really sweet spot, and maybe everybody's just staying super healthy and going to keep going, and it's a good plan.
And I like that smile.
It's a good thing. It's a good presentation. I'll take this kind of presentation any day.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Yep.
Approval of a motion authorizing the executive director to execute the necessary contracts and employment practices for the implementation of the 2019 Employee Benefits Program.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd? Aye. Commissioner Bell is an aye as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think rather than go into the settlement, because it'll take some time, I think we'll take a 5-minute break, reconvene with a public hearing. So be thinking of something to say. And convene here at 5:30. Is that enough time for you guys? 5:30? Okay. reconvene. We'll reconvene the commission meeting. Anyone wishing to speak before the commission about anything?
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay, public session closed. We're going to move on to action item number 4.
Approve a motion authorizing the executive director to execute a settlement and mutual release agreement with the estate of Carl Westman for remediation costs at the Westman Marine Cleanup Site.
Ben and Holly.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ben Howard, Environmental Project Manager. I'm hoping to continue the happy slides. That's my goal tonight. So I'll begin by providing the general history and the environmental background, and then Holly will describe the settlement agreement. Let's see. Sorry, I just have to catch my breath real quick. So as shown in this slide, the site's located in the Blaine Marina industrial area. This area in Blaine Harbor was historically tide flats prior to dredging and filling in the 1940s. The boatyard and seafood processing. Those operations began in 1949. The marine railway and the sidetracks were constructed in the late 1950s. And various tenants have operated at the site, including Westman Industrial, from 1976 to 1989, and that's the subject of the settlement agreement. The historical boatyard operations resulted in hazardous substances at the site, and currently Walsh Marine has operated since 2011. Early observations and investigations did document environmental issues, and then in 2013, the Port and Ecology entered into an agreed order to do a remedial investigation and feasibility study. Then an interim action was performed in 2013 and 2014 to remove metals and petroleum contaminated soil for a boundary fish building. And the remedial investigation was performed between 2013 and 2015, and that included both upland and sediment sampling. So this site includes both upland and sediment portions. A draft RIFS report was submitted to Ecology in December 2017 and is currently under review.
Question for you, Ben. What does RI and FS mean? I don't have my acronym sheet with me.
Sorry, it's a little above. It's remedial investigation and feasibility study. So
Okay, thank you.
the remedial investigation is the field work and sampling and analyzing the data, and the feasibility study goes into looking at different alternatives for the cleanup.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Holly Stafford. I'm one of the attorneys with Schmelik, Sitkin, and Davis. And as Ben mentioned, I'll be talking about the underlying settlement associated with this site. So in 2008, the Port notified Carl Westman of his potential liability for the site. If we go back a few slides, and we're talking about this blue highlight, 1976 to 1989, that Westman Industrial Company was Carl Westman doing business as Westman Industrial Co. So in 2008, that's when the Port first began to engage with Carl. And then things quieted down a little bit because on the technical side, things had slowed down on the site. In 2010, we were re-engaging with Mr. Westman and learned that he had passed away in 2009. So at that time, the Port made the decision to file a creditor's claim in the probate action that was filed in Whatcom County Superior Court. In 2012, the Port and the estate entered into a cost-share agreement. Again, this timing lines up. The agreement was entered into 2012, and you can see in 2013 is when the agreed order for the RIFS work was entered into with Ecology. So the Port had lined up a funding partner in the form of the estate, actually funded by its historical insurance carrier, Hartford Insurance, for a portion of that investigation work. And then where we are now is the RIFS work has been completed, and we're at the point of drafting the cleanup action plan. So we have a good sense of what the remedial alternative will be out at the site and the costs associated with that, which are estimated at this point to be about $6.14 million. In continuing to engage with the estate, and again, when I say the estate, I'm talking primarily the insurance carriers. The carriers provided a defense to the estate, and their attorney was funded through that insurance policy. So we've been negotiating with the estate for quite some time now, and because we've got the cleanup action plan cost, we were able to say, based upon that total cleanup cost and the amount of time that Carl Westman was operating out at the site, knowing what kind of activities he engaged in and what kind of constituents were likely released during that period of time, the port was able to determine that the estate's liability was somewhere in the range of $2.37 million. We know that the estate has insurance policy limits of $1.75 million, and we've established that through, on the initial stages, helping the estate locate and identify the insurance. And then as we got closer and closer to perhaps putting together a deal, we have essentially a certification from Hartford. There's Hartford signing off on the settlement agreement, verifying that those insurance policies that are identified in the agreement itself are the only known policies, and the estate itself is also certifying that there are no other insurance carriers that it's aware of.
Holly, could I interrupt you for just a second?
Yes.
Back up. I want to clarify that the estate is not paying attorney costs on this. That comes out of the insurance, correct?
Correct. When you have an insurance policy and a liability policy with something like $100,000 in limits, that's the indemnity side. The other portion of the policy is the defense side, and that defense obligation is a broader obligation that the carriers have. So that was early on in this process. The Hartford appointed an attorney to represent the estate in negotiations with the port in dealing with this environmental issue, including funding a consultant to review the technical side of things. And all of that work comes out of the defense side. It doesn't erode away anything on the indemnity side of the policy. But the estate itself didn't incur any out-of-pocket costs for that work.
Right, that's what I was alluding to, is that through this action and this cleanup action, the estate is not taking anything out of the pocket of the estate.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. So we've gotten to a point now that the port was able to issue a policy limits demand to the estate, knowing that the liability was around $2.37 million and the limits were less than that, enabled the port to issue a limits demand to say, estate, pay us your limits, and that will be essentially the end of it. That allows the insurance carrier to look at its risk, because if it turns down the ability to settle within policy limits and the port were to obtain a judgment against the estate in an amount higher than policy limits, the carrier is liable for that and can be liable in bad faith. So we got to the point about a month ago or so where we were able to come up with a deal that would work for the carrier, for the estate, and for the port for $1.75 million. In exchange, the port would release all claims against the estate. And then to go back in time just a little bit, this 1.75 would be added to some previous settlements that the port has negotiated with other PLPs. Back in 2010, the port settled with Westman Marine, Inc. For $240,000 in cash, plus equipment, haul-out equipment, travel lift, the marine railway, things like that are still out there at the site. And then in about a year ago, in December of 2017, the port settled with another of its tenants, who's actually an ongoing tenant, Boundary Fish Company, and its insurance company, Bedivere, for about $672,000. That one was interesting. It was a $100,000 policy limit, but because Boundary Fish was required to name the port as an additional insured on that policy, the port was able to recoup its defense costs, including the interim action costs that were incurred, about $92,000 there. So even though the limits on this one were only $100,000, the port was able to get $672,000 based on that defense indemnity piece that we were just discussing. So the total settlements, including the one before the commission today, will total $2.62 million for this project.
Sure. For the folks watching, PLP means?
Potentially liable person.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Holly. So the next steps in the cleanup process, so this really helps, the settlement allows the port to recover funds for the cleanup. And then with anticipated cleanup matching grant funds, that's close to $5 million to do the cleanup project. So the next steps is the RFS is expected to be finalized in 2019. And following that, the cleanup design will happen through 2019, 2020. And then we'll enter into a consent decree to perform the cleanup at some point in the future when we're ready for that. And the construction will be pending grant funding. There's potential that it could be a phased cleanup. It could be one complete project, or we could phase it depending on kind of permitting or grant funding, different considerations. So, thanks. Any questions?
Just a comment, if you can't tell, Holly's very good at what she does, and I appreciate the work. It obviously is in individual cases, saving our port and the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not in cases millions of dollars. The port's going to do these cleanups. We've got to do these cleanups, but this money helps make it possible, so we're still able to do other things that are economic development focused, they're housing focused, there are a whole variety of other directions we're able to keep our capital free. So I really appreciate the work.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, that's very kind. It definitely takes a team on a project like this. I don't have a technical background and have learned on the job, so it's folks like Ben, port staff, Brian Gowron, and the port's external consultants who, it takes the work of all of us together to be able to put together a package like this for the port.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have none.
I have none. Would you mind?
Approve a motion authorizing the executive director to execute a settlement and mutual release agreement with the estate of Carl Westman for remediation costs at the Westman Marine cleanup site.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Aye.
Commissioner Shepard?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell is also an aye. So thank you all. That was a big deal. Thank you. Action item number 5.
A motion authorizing the executive director to execute an energy services authorization under the interagency agreement number K5562 with the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services Energy Program for a solar panel installation at the Bellingham Cruise Terminal, pending no substantive changes to the form of agreement.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Adrienne Hedgedes. I'm with the Port of Bellingham as an environmental specialist. I am so excited to bring you the
All right,
next...
that's 2 tonight. So we
Yes.
got a home run.
Well, how can you not be excited about it? To bring before you the next step in the Bellingham Cruise Terminal solar panel installation. We have discussed that in the past. The last motion I brought before you was to enter into an interagency agreement with the Department of Enterprise Services, which allowed them to bring on an energy services company, or ESCO, to perform a preliminary audit of the solar installation project. So through our interagency agreement, the port authorized the Department of Enterprise Services to contract with Johnson Controls, Inc. as the ESCO. Johnson Controls has performed a preliminary evaluation on the cruise terminal, and it's good news so far.
Adrian, one question about the ESCO.
Yeah.
Who makes the decision? Are we making the decision of the contractor there, or is the ESCO making the decision?
So the ESCO has a pre-approved list. It's like a state contract, and then we can choose from that list.
We choose from that pre-approved list?
Yeah.
Okay. And are there local companies on that list as well as others? I don't recognize the Johnson Controls.
Right, so there are, well, is McKinstry local? I'm not actually sure how local any of those are. They tend to be larger companies than anybody that's based locally, but I can look into that for you if you'd like.
Okay. So these are larger companies that do something a little different than, say, Western Solar or
Right.
Ecotech.
Yeah,
And-
much bigger companies. McKinstry is Seattle-based, I believe, if not national. I don't believe the 2 local solar manufacturers on the list, but we'll double-check that and get back to you.
So Johnson Controls is also national, and from there, they can choose to have contractors, and we can provide a little bit of direction on that as well, and they have chosen some local subcontractors. Like the solar installer, for example, is a local. Yeah. So the motion today is to approve an energy services authorization, which is an attachment to your action memo, for a detailed investment grade audit, as well as assistance with that Department of Commerce grant application for the cruise terminal solar installation project. This investment grade audit will be performed by Johnson Controls under that IAA with the Department of Enterprise Services. So there's no contract with the Port of Bellingham and JCI, Johnson Controls directly. We talked last time about this being an unusual design and build process. One of the unique aspects is the contracting and payment structure. If the detailed investment grade audit shows a feasible solar installation and we get that Department of Commerce grant, we will pay the investment grade audit fee of the $24,480 that's mentioned in the motion as a part of the construction costs in 2019. So if we don't get the grant, we don't move forward. Or if they find that it's just not a feasible project for whatever reason, then we don't move forward and we don't pay that investment grade audit fee. So the deliverable from that investment grade audit will be an energy services proposal, and that will tell us the maximum cost as well as the guaranteed energy cost savings of the project. Staff recommends approval. I'd love to hear any questions that you might have.
Are you still thinking around 400 panels? Is that number going to change based on this audit?
It may change based on the audit. So they've provided an initial analysis that shows that more than 400 will fit. Whether that fits in our budget is another story. So that we'll get that information out of this investment grade audit.
And do we have an idea for the power production capacity?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. I can get that for you though. Mm-hmm. It's not, I can tell you it's about a quarter of what the historical usage has been at the cruise terminal itself, if that gives you kind of an idea of the scale of it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming part of this, looking at all this, is the weight of these things, and we don't have a structural problem with.
That's in process still.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. And this will be a local panel company?
Yes.
Okay.
That's something we also provide direction on.
I didn't say name, I just said local.
Mm-hmm. I will say the grant will give us extra points for Washington-made components and panels.
Yeah, when I meant local, like it's in the county?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My question was on rate of return. Do we have an ROI on?
That will be part of this investment grade audit. Mm-hmm.
It'll be in gigawatts.
Nothing further, do you?
Nope.
I have no more questions.
A motion authorizing the executive director to execute an energy services authorization under the interagency agreement number K5562 with the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services Energy Program for a solar panel installation at the Bellingham Cruise Terminal, pending no substantive changes to the form of agreement.
Aye.
Aye.
And aye. 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you, Adrian.
Action item number 6.
A motion to,
Picture with this one.
excuse me. A motion to authorize the executive director to execute an interlocal agreement with the city of Bellingham for installation, operation, and maintenance of port fiber conduit in Roeder Avenue and C Street.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities. I'd just like to give you a little background on what we're asking for this evening. About 20 years ago, the port, with the development of the Bellwether Peninsulas, began kind of formally installing communication infrastructure into the ground. We call it High Technology Communications Infrastructure, or HTCI. It's a system now we've put in several of our properties, which I'll draw in red for you. as well. So that was installed throughout the Bellwether Peninsula, throughout Squalicum Harbor. Approximately, like I said, about 20 years ago is when that started. Additionally, within the last year, this system was also installed in the waterfront district along Granary and Laurel Avenues. So you can see the obvious problem, and that is that we are disconnected from each other, yet we have some rather large bodies of conduit that are being used today by several of our companies, including one of our commissioners. What this project will do is connect us from Bellwether here to the C Street. A future phase, which the commission has already approved the design of, will get us across the waterway and connect. The city of Bellingham, where you're seeing this project today, I guess blue. So what the city of Bellingham is doing is they're going to overlay Rotor from down here at the cold storage, and they're going to go along here to Whatcom Waterway. They're going to take out street trees and sidewalks where the trees have made the sidewalks unlevel. And they're going to redo the road. It's about I think, $2.2 million project. What you have before you today then is an interlocal for us to, when they open the sidewalk there where the yellow is shown, we would hop into that trench with our own conduit. They would install it for us. We would simply be reimbursing them via an interlocal agreement and a bid schedule. So it's a good partnership with the city. It's economical, it's opportunistic, and then later, as the commission will see, I suspect within the first part of 2019, we would install that green segment, and then you can see the result. We will be connected essentially from Cornwall in our own conduits, our own bank of conduits with fiber in them, et cetera, all the way along the waterfront and clear into Squalicum Harbor. So a really fantastic vision, I think, 20 years ago by others, and here we are getting to complete a portion of it with this action today. Before I lose this picture, do the commissioners have any questions on this?
So just what does connecting it do for us that they don't do when they're separated?
Yeah, thanks. And I'm going to ask Director Fix to chime in on this. He's fantastic with this thing.
So there's basically two places in Bellingham where off-ramps, if you will, on the high-speed conduit or fiber that goes through town. One of them is over in our harbor area, in the Squalicum Harbor area, and the other one is up on up by the police station, which I'm not sure where that is on this map. By DuPont there, I think. Yeah, so somewhere on DuPont Street there is that police station. Yeah, somewhere in that area.
Point of presence is over here, I believe, also.
Yeah, so we're trying to connect to those places to get that fiber connectivity to our GP site or the development down there. So by connecting the yellow and the green, you're connecting to the backbone that goes up and down I-5.
And as Director Fix can tell you, this is a difference maker in regards to development.
Yeah, no question. I mean, when we're talking to high-tech companies, they don't want Comcast or CenturyLink or Verizon. They want a direct connection to the Westin Building in Seattle or to Harbor Center Building up in Vancouver, which is their major point of presence. So they want that connectivity right in there. They want to deal with much higher speed bandwidths than what they can get over something like a Comcast connection.
I have a couple questions for you, Adam, as usual.
Yeah, sure.
You drew the blue dots. The one over here in Squalicum Harbor, that's where we hook in at?
That's one of the two locations in Bellingham that you could hook into, correct?
Right. So the red line, when you drew the red line, it goes out through the boat houses there. We have fiber optic all the way out there to that?
We do.
How come we don't have it over on the other part for us poor guys?
It's the newer section is where we have it. We can certainly put in the other ones. Most people don't have fiber right up to their boathouse or to their boat, but we do use it for security cameras, et cetera.
Okay, that's what it's for?
Yeah.
All right, okay, very good. Then the next question I have is, so virtually the yellow line's gonna be on top of the blue line is kind of where ours is gonna go with theirs, right?
The blue, in the blue, I've just shown
City.
the extent of the city's overlay project, within which they're going to be tearing out and making access available for us.
Right, so I guess what I'm getting at is really our yellow line will overlay their blue line when ours will be in with theirs over there?
You are correct. The commissioner's correct. They'll have conduits in the ground as well.
Do they not come across the waterway now? Does their blue end right there, that's it? They don't come across?
I believe the commissioner's correct, that I don't believe there's a crossing across Whatcom Waterway. I think it hops over to Holly.
Yep, it
And-
crosses the waterway at Holly Street, that's correct.
But the city does cross there?
Correct, on Holly, but not on Roder.
Okay, so our yellow's gonna connect into the blue through their tunnel, or we have to put our own there?
I'm sorry, can the commissioner ask again?
So the green line we've got where you propose we're gonna go across on Holly, right?
Yes.
We can't just keep going in their tube across Holly?
Okay, yeah, the green, we're actually going to cross on Roder, on the Roder Street Bridge. So we'll go straight from C Street by Tom Aliotti's property, across Whatcom Waterway, beneath the
Okay.
concrete bridge, over to the granary.
Okay.
And we are stubbed out as far as we can get toward the waterway
Okay.
from Granary Avenue.
You know, I was confused because the green's on Holly and not the Roder, so I thought we were gonna go through there.
No, it's going on Roder.
Okay, all right, very good.
Yeah, that's the fault of my drawing.
That's okay, thanks. And will we bring this down to any of our offices over in the terminal over here? 'Cause I see the red ends on Roder there. I mean, and you've got a lot of,
We could certainly go down Cornwall if there's a need. I don't think there's a need today, but we certainly
we
in the
could.
future, yep.
okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
There's a
Adam.
number of future, when we install a system like this, we put vaults at takeoff points. So there's a number of forethought available to us. Oops, pardon me. That would be the wrong one. Let's go yellow. There'll be different opportunities for us to extend into properties from vaults that we put in the system. Again, this started 20 years ago, and it's really a fantastic system, and here we're getting to do a piece of it today, and it is well forethought to accommodate future development.
So when you say we put vaults into the system, so every so far there's an access point, we can go down in and blow a line underground into that too?
You are correct.
So we'd push it under the railroad. At the yellow lines you have, we would push under the railroad into this
It's going to
city's
be on,
vault over there, or what?
it's going to be on this side of the railroad.
Yeah,
So
it's
the yellow
along-
is under Chestnut Roder,
Okay.
not under Holly.
So the city's not coming up Holly, they're coming under Roder? then?
Correct.
Okay, all right. That's why I was a little confused.
little bit better.
That's
I
a lot-
apologize.
Well, that's a lot of stuff to push it under. That's why I was wondering what was.
Yeah, it's already on this side of the railroad, so we won't have to deal with that.
Okay,
railroad
all right,
right away.
very good. That explains that. All right, thank you.
Yeah. The commissioners have any other questions?
Not currently.
No.
Okay, please.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute an interlocal agreement with the city of Bellingham for installation, operation, and maintenance of port fiber conduit in Roder Avenue and C Street.
Commissioner Shipper? Aye. Commissioner Briscoe? Aye. Commissioner Bell is also an aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
And last but not least, action item number 7.
Okay. A commission motion authorizing the Port of Bellingham Executive Director to execute a 2018 through 2020 interlocal agreement between the Port of Bellingham and the Public Utility District for the purpose of developing strategic plans on infrastructure and rural broadband.
Good evening, Commissioners. Gina Stark, Communication and Research Coordinator for Economic Development Division. So keeping with the theme, I'm really excited, and I'm going to be quick so we can get out of here and I'll go home. Woohoo! So I'm asking you to authorize the Executive Director to enter into a interlocal agreement with PUD. We are wanting to partner and collaborate with the PUD and also jointly fund 3 really important strategic plans. And I like to think of them as more like pre-construction plans, not just studies, because we know we don't like studies just to do studies. So they're more like pre-construction plans. One of them is to do a master plan for Cherry Point, to kind of really look at it to see what are the best uses for that. We all know that it's a very vital piece of land that we've talked about many times. So to really be beginning to look at it strategically about what are the best uses for that for those pieces of land. The second one is to do a need gap analysis for infrastructure. We've got lots of pieces of property, a lot of industrial pieces of property, and we just don't have the information that we need in terms of infrastructure. So when businesses come to us and want to either expand or relocate, we just don't have the information that we need to say this is a great piece of property for you to locate. It has the needs that that will fit your business for manufacturing. So we really need to be strategic about our infrastructure. Start thinking about how to connect these infrastructures. So that's the second one. And the third one is rural broadband. Many of our small cities do not have the broadband that they need. Our farms, our manufacturers, our small businesses, they're relying more and more on technology, and they just don't have it. They don't have access to the broadband. So this is our first phase of a feasibility study to, again, do the assessment, to begin to do phases of construction. Phase one's to get an estimate of the cost for this construction. And so those are the three studies that we are asking you to approve for the interlocal so that we can work with the PUD. And that's it. Any questions?
For that timeline, do you think for any of the broadband we'll see implementation within the 2018 to 2020 timeline, or is it really just getting study and this kind of plans built out?
So the contract is for December 31st of 2020. So yes, we are hoping to get the feasibility study done by January of 2020 and then begin construction. So yes, we're hoping to see some construction within that timeline. Yeah.
And my only other question is, has the PUD already approved this?
Yes, their commission approved it last week. Which is also why this is really exciting.
This is probably more specific to broadband than anything else, but is
Yeah.
there a needs assessment at some point coming, and maybe this is more for you, Don, that has the you build it, they will come approach, so that we know what kind of infrastructure is going to draw or what needs are out there?
In terms of broadband?
No, outside of the scope of broadband. I think I'm looking at a grander.
Oh, in terms of infrastructure,
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
So
needs.
I don't believe there's been a study of any kind on if you build it, they will come. I think the reality is everybody, including my experience, is that businesses will not even consider going to a property if it's not fully ready to be built. And so not only do we have to get utilities to them, but we also often they want to have permits in hand, streets completed, things of that nature. So we have a long way to go to get properties ready for development.
I guess my point there is I hope this is just the first in a series of things that say this is what we need to do to make that job ready at that location.
And something that Gina didn't mention was last week we were approved for a $50,000 curb grant towards broadband as well. So
Oh, yeah, sorry.
did I wreck your?
No, it's okay. You can steal my thunder. It's fine.
Is, I guess it's just me, but is there any steps that the commission here, that we can help make this go faster? I mean, this is, once again, my hairs are getting grayer by the day, and I'm looking at two years at least to make this start happening, and I think it should have happened 10 years ago, but that's not our fault. But my question is there a way that we can make this go faster?
It's very.
I know it's difficult.
No.
I understand that.
I agree with you and feel the same way. It's just it's a very long process because we can't implement something until we know what the technology available, the most cost-effective ways, and so I think it's the time up front now and the money spent is well worth it so that we are able to accelerate the implementation when we have facts.
I'm going to say what he said in maybe a different way. If there's a way this commission can take away some of the roadblocks, I think for myself, I view this as being one of the most, I think this is going to create more value for this county than just about anything that we've got in our inventory. And if there's a way that we can do something that would remove a roadblock, whether it be a landowner that doesn't want to do something, we've got to figure out a way that we can intervene in that. From an economic development standpoint, I would support anything that would hasten that. So if you find a roadblock that just needs a little bit of leverage or
A gentle nudge.
whatever it may be, maybe it's that we need to go out and buy something out there in order to create it. I'm not taking that off the table because I view this as a very, very keen opportunity, and I think now's the time. I think your vision has been right on. So just know that you've got to come to us with anything that you may need if you see a roadblock.
No, thank you. Yeah, Gina's been doing a great job. She's
All
been
right, so
meeting
Gina,
a lot.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Gina, come to us at
I've
any
done
point in
nothing.
time. Don, sit down.
Ouch, did that hurt, Don? Did that hurt?
I'm used to it.
I thank you for that. There might be blocks for infrastructure and for broadband. I talked to Sarah Young down at the Port of Skagit, and the roadblocks that they have come across, and there are things sometimes with permitting right-of-ways, things like that, that we might come across. And so right now, I think the most challenging thing is that, A, we don't know what we don't know, and B, there really is a lot of lack of information. So really trying to dig up a lot of that information has been really challenging. So I think once we get through some of that, just digging deep, we'll get a clear picture of what we need. So, but thank you. We will be coming to you.
Can you tell me, or tell us, who the major landowner is in the area we're talking about?
Well, for my perspective, Cherry Point aside, a lot of what I'm dealing with, it's, city, county kind of land, like a lot of the small cities, who owns this piece. Across the street, it'll be the county, and then the other side, it's the city. So, and a lot of the stuff, it was done so long ago that nobody recorded any of it. So that's kind of the stuff that is the big challenge right now.
So I was kind of more alluding to the actual owner of the property at Cherry Point that we want to see developed.
Well, so of course, there's multiple things here, as
Yeah.
Cherry Point, as Gina said, and then the rollout of broadband. Broadband will probably follow a lot of public utility easements and things of that nature, poles, depending on the technology. In Cherry Point, depending on how broad we go with the broadband, is there's basically two major owners for approximately 1,500 acres for the developable area. So most likely, we would just have to get the broadband to the region, and then when they develop the property into a business park, they would distribute broadband as well as all the other utilities that they needed to do.
And what kind of development are these folks open to, Don?
Well, the company that I'm working with right now to come down and to, who's serious about developing Cherry Point, is a large Canadian land developer that has done parks like this many times. And they're working currently with SSA, and I'm connecting them to the other landowner. So they're very serious. They're very... They have a big background in doing this type of project. This is not large for them, and that's what they specialize in. So typically, all the utilities are, just like our waterfront, are laid at the same time when the streets are open and they start putting conduits in. So they either put the utility in at that time or they have the conduit in the ground for later.
Are these folks looking, I know we're generalizing, but large industrial plots or The
developer that I'm talking to now is a master developer. So they would either partner in a P3 type of model with the public and the existing landowners, or would acquire or purchase the property and develop the land, and then those parcels would be sold to individual companies or other developers that build buildings. So they're the most important and most difficult part of the equation, is the company that's willing to long-term put money into the ground and spend millions of dollars to get the property ready for development.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, when it comes to industrial land, it's a scarce commodity, and I want to make sure that we make the most of it and don't lose it. All right.
A commission motion authorizing the Port of Bellingham Executive Director to execute a 2018 through 2020 interlocal agreement between the Port of Bellingham and the Public Utility District for the purpose of developing strategic plans on infrastructure and rural broadband.
Mr. Briscoe?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Al is also an aye. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Don. Well done. Okay, I'm going to, at this point, I'm going to announce the advisory committee meetings. The Marina Advisory Committee meeting is Tuesday, January 15th at 6 p.m. in the Harbor Center building, which is right here. The Technical Airport Advisory Committee is Thursday, January 10th at 9:30 in the ARF Conference Center, 2005 West Bakerview Road. There's the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee is Thursday, January 10th at 5 p.m., also in that advisory conference room, 2005 West Bakerview Road. So that takes care of those committees. Any other business for the good of the order?
I have a little bit, just kind of some questions, and some of them were just answered by Don. Just a refresher for myself, and I'm sure Brian's probably going to answer this one for me. We're still moving along on the ASB, trying to figure out where we at with that in planning mode, or getting to it, or?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Brian Guerin, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. That's correct. Yeah, we are actively working on the Whatcom Waterway Phase 2 cleanup project, which the ASB is part of. So we anticipate bringing forward to the Commission, likely at one of the January Commission meetings, an update and a recommendation for direction from the Commission. So we're putting the fine-tuning points on that right now with our internal work group, and we'll bring it forth to the Commission at one of the next couple of Commission meetings.
All right, thank you, Brian. I just wanted to let people know we hadn't forgot about what we're supposed to
Still
be doing.
working on it.
And then probably a question for Director Fix. We still dreaming somewhere about the barge terminal thing? I know it's still getting kicked around out there, but do you think we're making any progress?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple locations possible for that would be the Mount Baker Peninsula and then the ASB, depending on how we did the ASB conversion. I've had some conversation with Doug Thomas about it, not moving real fast. It's probably about a $10 million investment. Something to keep in the back of your heads as to how we come up with that money and if the business volumes justify it. Tamara?
Come up with the money? I was just pointing to come up with the money. Thank you.
Yep.
I just want to remind folks every once in a while in the meetings that there are things that, and it's being asked about, talked about, that we have things we're doing that aren't discussed in the meeting all the time. So just a bit of an update for folks if they're interested and want to know that those things are on the plate and they are being shuffled around. So, and that's all I have.
And I had a couple of quick things. One's just an update. We did, Mr. Fix and I were at a meeting where we got the bylaws passed for at least the beginning of a 501c3 for the exploration of a hatchery with that body. And that went very well. So at least we're in the beginning stages of maybe possibly getting some money raised for a nonprofit. Our hopes are that we can begin doing something with that in early 2019 in an aggressive manner.
And Ken, are you going to be taking lead at going to those meetings? Because I know we can only have one.
And I was just going to bring that up. Something we need to discuss. And I'll throw my 2 cents worth in right away because it'll narrow it down to 2 guys. I've been around this stuff most of my life, and I guess all my life since the inception of the hatchery programs we've dealt with lately here. So.
Did we have automobiles then?
No, actually, we were rowing. So I'm pretty up to speed on everything that's going on with the hatcheries. And I think it should be one of you two gentlemen that are there all the time, and I can be kept in the loop by, well, he's grinning. I don't know if I can.
Well, that did not go the direction I thought it was going to go. It was, you
So
you
I
lay
have-
out all the reasons why you should be the one to be there, and then you tell us we should be there.
Well, not really. Like I said, I'm pretty much up to speed all the time and work with the stuff every year. So you guys have an interest, which is really good. And you're not as up to speed as I am with hatchers and how they've got to where they are. So it's very informative for you two. And as the information goes through, I expect it to come down the line from you guys, or Rob to I. So it's between you two guys. And I want Doug Thomas to understand, and that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. I want him to understand it's not disinterest on my part, but simply I think that the information, you two guys really need to get the information firsthand and come up from the ground floor. So that's why I'm stepping, I would step back and not take the lead on this, because I think that one of you two gentlemen should do that. And then if input's needed. And the other reason is so the folks understand what's going on, is only one of us can be there at these meetings. They're not open public meetings. And if we have two or more of us there, it has to be an open public meeting, which creates a problem. So we have to narrow it down to one person.
So
Did I say that all right?
And so if you're going to take yourself out, I don't care which one of us goes. If you have a desire, go.
We're going to eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or what?
Yeah.
I got to go to Juneau.
Got a quarter?
I got to go to Juneau already, so I'll let you go to the meetings. Doesn't sound like a
Oh,
great.
was that an easy way out or what?
I got to go to Juneau, so fair trade.
Yeah, but they're going next year again too, you know.
Well,
I saw that.
I'd be more than happy to represent the commission on those meetings.
Thanks, Ken.
I will also say that we have asked for a board seat for a member of staff to be a member of the board, so that we've got a permanent presence on the staff. And my take is this is going to take a number of years, so we'll probably outlive a lot of our terms.
I was thinking Mike Hogan would sit on that board. He's been pretty involved in the project.
But
I would agree.
But I'm really excited about the direction it's going and the speed at which it's going. So we just hope that we can keep that going. And
Yeah, we'll wait till you meet Noah.
I'm not as worried about Noah as I am some other
acronyms
things that may come out of the blue. Yeah. And with that, I was very pleased with the way the MAC went. That was a very good meeting, Paul. Thank you for taking what could have been a very difficult issue and resolving it. And Jim, you are really a voice of reason when it comes to this stuff. It's nice to have you in the room, because you're good at determining what's right and what's wrong, and you're steady. So thank you for your presence in those meetings as well. With that, meeting adjourned.